Awesome. And that was great. I love just hearing people like chat like that. So Mike Jungmuth here, lead animator at Volition, and I'm now here with Jeremy Collins, senior animator,
yeah,
at Blizzard.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Hi, Michael.
How are you?
Good. I'm well, thank you.
All right, interview over. That was it.
Okay, great.
This
was good.
Let's give some people some insight to your past. You came from film originally, and now you're working on games.
Yeah, I started as a film animator, 13 years ago. Went to college for animation, did film for a while, worked on a bunch of cool feature animated films, and then started at Blizzard 5.5 years ago.
That's awesome.
I loved it ever since.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great.
So what is it then that inspires you to do animation or to even want to become an animator?
I have a kind of a weird answer to that. I originally wanted to become an animator because I was really into puppeteering. So my dad was a video editor, and so he worked a lot for the Children's Television Workshop, which is the company, I guess, that does Sesame Street. So we had spent, he'd brought us down to the set, and we could see, Big Bird and all that stuff, and I kind of fell in love with Henson puppeteering. So to this day, and it sounds super lame, but like my favorite movie is still The Labyrinth. So so I really love that film, and I love puppeteering in general because it's just like, it's basically animating live, So that's how I kind of came to animation. My mom and dad took me to see Toy Story in 1995 in the theaters, and from there it was kind of like I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I just pursued it, basically. In high school, I was always in art classes, but, just like learning the craft of animation, going to art school to become an animator, and then eventually not being any good out of art school, and then learning how to animate in the real life.
Yes, we know that. We know that pain. What is it that you hope to accomplish with the work that you do?
I guess elicit an emotional response from people. That's really the kind of goal of most storytelling, I would think, is like, trying to best tell a story and kind of tap into that kind of emotional center that we all kind of are connected together as humans. That sounds really weird.
No, it's...
But I mean, that's really what it is, right? It's like when, even when you see... Obviously, you're trying to simulate things like weight and, personality and all that other stuff, but really connecting to those kind of like base human emotions that we have as humans is kind of the goal of, I would say, most animators, just like making sure we all do that.
Yeah.
Then we're doing our jobs.
What can you think of a piece of animation, film or games or that you've worked on or that you've seen that's like done that for you, that's elicited that emotion?
Well, I'm not going to say anything I've ever... I mean, hopefully the stuff I've worked on has done that, but I want to say, Miyazaki's films really grab me there. He's so good at just, transporting you to that place, where, where you just... everything is kind of, almost like, oh, yeah, that belongs there, because he's fleshed out the world so wholly, So, basically, I mean, my favorite Miyazaki film is probably Spirited Away.
Yeah.
But, in terms of just even things where there's no dialogue involved, I love the animation of Dark Souls, some of Double Fine's work, Psychonauts is fantastic, and I obviously love my coworkers' Overwatch work, and I think the stuff we do, specifically the cinematics team at Blizzard does, is really, really cool, and you feel an emotional response watching those shorts for
Definitely.
Sure. Yeah, I think so.
You worked on Tangled, right?
I did, yeah.
Did you get Glenn Keane drawovers on any of your shots?
I sure. At some point I did. I wish I had saved them.
What was that like? Because that's, Glenn Keane to animators is like the top, right?
I think there's times I think you can go back to basically, and I'm sure you can as well, being an animator yourself, go back to times in your career where you go I've grown so much from that experience. That was one of those experiences, it was like one of those things where you work on a film and we were all working super, super hard on that film, but at the same time, all that hard work, obviously all that love was going into the film, but also just, I remember after looking back on the experience afterwards and just seeing oh my gosh, I've grown so much as an animator. My workflow is so much more concise and refined, and maybe I wasn't super sure how my acting choices were, but I know they got better on that film, you know, like all that other stuff. So it's definitely one of, I guess they call them seminal experiences, whenever you make a big leap in your growth. So yeah, that was certainly one. And learning from Glenn Keane is just like incredible. You know, he's just obviously a master of animation. He's just, he was so generous with his knowledge. I think that was probably my favorite part of working on that movie.
Yeah, it's what we had a professor at school that worked at Disney, and it was one of those things where he would try to explain things with words or something, and if he couldn't get across, he's like, just let me sit down and do a draw over, and like that was where thought process just like happened, and you could see that kind of happening in real time in a way that I think sometimes just explaining it or breaking it down or pointing and and it's just that second like extra bit of I see you doing it, and you kind of get a glimpse into, and it just light switches turn on.
Absolutely, yeah. I was listening to Scott McCloud this morning, Understanding Comics. He said something this morning that really resonated with me. He said, text are words, but pictures are words as well. So it's kind of like basically what you're talking about there. It's like that kind of like sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. You know? You can just like understand a lot easier through that medium for sure. But yeah, it was a great experience. I really, really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine like most people hearing that, like animators start to go like instant jealousy, right? Because it's just, that's one of those moments I think everyone kind of links back to. And
it came out of the blue too. I remember one time working on that film, and I had a shot where Rapunzel and Flynn were running out of the cave, and Rapunzel we were trying to, like, I guess they had figured out that Rapunzel would have to gather up her hair so that she could run. Otherwise, it would just be like, getting caught on everything. So when I first started that shot, I grabbed the hair and I was like, okay, make a big ball basically of hair in her hands. And then I showed it in dailies. And I remember Glenn going like, you have to design the bundle. Like, it can't just be a bundle of hair. It has to be a good-looking bundle of hair. And so the draw-over he did was like, this is what the bundle should look like. And there were all these beautiful loops kind of cascading off her arm and all that other stuff. And I was like, okay. So I went back to my desk, and I was like, this is all garbage. Deleted all the keys on the hair, and then basically just reposed to his drawing, and it looked so much better. And it was actually more economical to animate, too, because it was like, now that I had this giant, like, main massive hair, then all I was basically doing is making that kind of bounce in her hands, and then the loops were kind of on their own, jiggling on their own. So it was actually quite a bit like easier in the long run. And it was just, he just knew exactly what it needed to be and went, and that was it. It was great.
Wow, that's so going from, obviously you have that experience in a film where everything is like very the amount of time and the fidelity and polish and stuff, and then moving into game side, how was that difference for you?
Well, that's funny that you asked that question, because like a lot of my film friends were like, I told them, oh yeah, I got a job at Blizzard and working at Blizzard Entertainment. They're like, oh, did you do that new Overwatch cinematics? And I was like, no, I'm an in-game animator. They're like, why? Because in-game animation has this kind of like, I guess, I don't know what you call it, like a stigma that like it's lower quality somehow sometimes, or sometimes that, you hear like animators, maybe mention that, but really it's the quality level is what you make it. And also, you have to just like, I saw that as a challenge, and that's why I took that, position basically, so I could help improve in-game animation.
Yeah, the constraints and challenges are where the fun's at. So
yeah, problem solving.
But all right, well, I think we're ready to go to Mariel Cart right now. She's going to be doing a talk on Back to Basics about 2D animation in games. So Mariel, take it away. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.